Level 1. The volunteer. The bus stops at 4 a.m. Nobody says a word. You step off into a parking lot lit by sodium lamps, breath fogging in the cold, and a man in a tan beret is already screaming instructions you can't fully hear. Your bag is on your back. Your name is a number now. You volunteered for this. That's the part nobody tells you, that the worst 30 seconds of your life are the ones you signed up for on purpose. Selection doesn't explain itself. It doesn't have to. You run until your legs stop being legs and become something else, something mechanical, something that just moves because stopping means going home. You carry a rucksack that feels like it's full of stones because it is full of stones. You sleep 90 minutes and wake up wetter and colder than when you laid down. Here's the first rule, though nobody states it out loud. They're not testing your body. Your body was never the variable. They're testing whether you'll quit when quitting is the only rational choice left. You watch a man next to you, strong, capable, better than you on paper, walk to the white truck and get in. Nobody stops him. Nobody argues with him. The truck just drives away and he's gone, and it's like he was never assigned a number at all. You don't ask where the truck goes. You already know. By week 3, something in you has gone quiet. Not broken quiet. The part of you that used to negotiate with pain, that used to ask, is this worth it, has stopped talking. You just move. You've learned the first currency of this world, the one that underwrites everything else that follows. The ability to keep functioning after your mind has told you to stop. They don't teach you that. You either already have it or the white truck finds you. At the end, they hand you a piece of felt and don't smile when they do it. There's no parade. Just a room full of men who look at you differently now, not warmly, just differently. You've been counted. There's a moment around day 19 when a cadre member crouches next to you in the mud and asks, quietly, almost gently, why you're still here. It's not an insult. It's a genuine question, and it catches you off guard more than any of the screaming ever did. You don't have an answer that sounds good out loud, so you just say, because I haven't quit, and he nods like that's the only correct answer that exists. You start noticing the small economy of respect that governs everything here. Nobody cares about your resume. Nobody cares what you did before the bus. The only currency that has value is what you do in front of the 12 other exhausted, freezing people around you, right now, in real time. Reputation gets built in seconds and spent in seconds, and you learn to guard yours like it's the only thing you own, because at this level, it is. You think you understand what you've joined. You don't. Not yet. Level 2. The operator. The group patch goes on your shoulder, and for the first time, people below you exist. New guys arrive at the schoolhouse the way you did, hollow-eyed, waiting for the truck that might come for them too, and you watch them the way the cadre watched you, except now you know the secret they were guarding. You know it's not really about strength. You're assigned to a team. 12 men, give or take, and a chain of command so tight it functions like a family with worse arguments. Everyone has a job. Weapons sergeant. Communications sergeant. Medic. Engineer. You are exactly 1/12 of a very small, very expensive machine, and the first thing you learn is that the machine doesn't care about your ego. It cares about the mission. Deployment comes faster than you expect. Somewhere with heat that sits on your chest like a hand. You spend months building relationships with people whose names you'll never say out loud again, once your home informants, local fighters, a translator who has 3 names depending on who's listening. You learn that trust here isn't emotional. It's transactional, and it's fragile, and it can flip in an afternoon. You make your first real moral compromise here, and it's smaller than you expected. An informant asks for money that isn't authorized. You pay it anyway, out of a stack that isn't yours to spend freely, because the information is worth more than the paperwork violation. Nobody above you asks where the money went. That's the second rule: results erase questions. You start rationalizing in a new dialect. Not, this is right, but this works. The two stop needing to be the same thing. Something in you toughens further. You come home and your family says you're different, and you say you're fine, and neither of you believes it, but you both let it go because that's easier than the alternative. You've become competent. Dangerous in the specific technical sense, not the movie sense. You know what your hands are for now. You start keeping 2 versions of every story. The one you tell in the debrief room, precise and clipped and useful. And the one that plays behind your eyes at 3 a.m., which is messier, and doesn't end when the report does. You get better at keeping the two separate. That skill will serve you for the rest of your life, in every direction, the good ones and the bad ones. Money starts to mean something different too. Your paycheck is almost beside the point. What matters is the cash you're issued for the mission, sometimes $5,000, sometimes $50,000, handed over in a sealed envelope with a number and no name attached, and how you account for it afterward, in a ledger only 3 people will ever read. You learn that a receipt is a story, and stories can be true in the ways that matter without being true in every detail. But you're still just an operator. Somebody else decides where you go. Level 3. The team sergeant. Rank changes the math. You're not just executing the plan anymore, you're the one who has to make the plan survivable. Team sergeant means the 12 guys under you are, in a very real sense, your responsibility to bring home, and that weight sits differently than any rucksack ever did. You start speaking a new language, risk versus objective. Every mission gets run through a private calculation. Nobody writes down, is this target worth what it might cost me? You get good at that calculation. Too good maybe. You start doing it about people in your personal life without meaning to. Here's where the first real corruption enters, quiet and administrative. You learn how after-action reports get shaped. Not lies shaping. A detail omitted here, a body count rounded there, a civilian incident reframed as a dynamic threat response, because the alternative is 6 months of investigation that helps nobody and changes nothing. You tell yourself it's protecting your men, and it is, and that's exactly why it's so easy to keep doing. Money moves differently at this level too. Not personal money, operational money. Cash for informants, cash for access. Cash that exists in ledgers only you and 2 other people ever see. You control tens of thousands of dollars with no receipt trail, and the first time you realize how easy it would be to skim some for yourself, you're almost disturbed by how little the thought bothers you. You don't skim it. Not yet. But you remember that the door is there. Your identity has fully shifted now. You don't introduce yourself with your job at parties anymore. You don't go to parties. Your friends are almost entirely people who've bled near you. Civilians start to feel like a different species. Soft, loud, worried about things that seem impossibly small. You've stopped being the person who left. You're someone new, built entirely inside this system, and you've started to like who you've become, which is its own kind of warning you don't have time to notice. You develop a habit of reading rooms before you read people. Who's in charge here, who's actually in charge, who thinks they're in charge and is wrong. It becomes automatic. A reflex you can't switch off, even standing in line at a grocery store back home, scanning exits without deciding to. Your wife notices you always take the seat facing the door. You've never explained why. She stopped asking. 12 men trust you with their lives on a rotating 6-month basis, and you carry that the way some men carry debt, quietly, constantly recalculating the balance. You start to measure your own worth almost entirely by whether everyone came home. Some rotations they don't. You learn to keep functioning through that too, filing it somewhere you don't visit often, and telling yourself that's discipline and not something closer to erosion. Level 4. The warrant. They pull you off the direct action rotation and hand you something heavier. Institutional knowledge. Warrant officer isn't about muscle anymore. It's about the relationships that keep a team alive across years, across theaters, across 3 different wars that all get called the same name in the news. You become a broker of information. Which asset is reliable, which liaison is compromised, which local commander can be trusted with a shipment of anything. This is where fear starts working for you instead of against you. You notice gradually that people are careful around you in a new way. Not because you're the strongest man in the room, you rarely are anymore, but because you know things. You know which colonel took a payment he shouldn't have. You know which operation actually happened versus which operation got reported. Information becomes your currency, and it's a better currency than cash because cash runs out and information compounds. You start trading in it. Carefully. A favor here, a piece of intelligence that saves someone's career in exchange for a favor banked for later, unspecified, understood. The moral terrain gets foggier here, not because the decisions get more dramatic, but because they get more abstract. You're no longer choosing whether to pull a trigger. You're choosing which truths reach which desks, and truths shaped correctly can end careers or save them just as effectively as any weapon. You tell a young team leader once, half joking, The enemy was never really the enemy. The organizational chart is the actual battlefield. He laughs. You don't because you meant it. Your family has mostly stopped asking what you do. You've stopped volunteering it. There's a version of you that exists only inside secure facilities, and a version that goes home for Thanksgiving, and the gap between them has become a country of its own that nobody else has a visa to enter. You start to notice a pattern in who rises past this level and who plateaus here forever. It's rarely the best shooters. It's the ones who understand that every organization, no matter how lethal, is still just people protecting their own position, and the ones who learn to make themselves useful to that instinct, rather than threatening to it, are the ones who keep climbing. You begin mentoring in the loose, unofficial way this world does mentorship, not lessons, just proximity. A younger operator asks you once how you knew which pieces of intelligence to sit on and which to escalate immediately. You tell him the truth, which sounds like a riddle. You escalate what protects people. You sit on what only protects yourself. He writes it down like it's wisdom. It is and it isn't. You've broken your own rule more than once and told yourself it counted as an exception. You are, by every internal metric, thriving. You are also, by every external metric, disappearing. Level 5. The task force. The call comes at 2:13 a.m. and this time you're the one making it. You've been folded into something bigger, a task force, a name that changes depending on which building you're standing in, staffed by people from 5 different units who all technically don't exist on paper the same way. This is the layer where the country's most sensitive problems get quietly solved by people whose families think they're on training rotations. Here, the currency shifts entirely to leverage. You don't pay informants in cash anymore, you pay them in protection, in visas, in the quiet disappearance of a legal problem back home. You've learned that leverage, once built, doesn't spend itself down like money does. It grows. A favor owed today becomes 3 favors owed tomorrow, compounding the way debt does for people who are bad at managing it. You authorize your first operation you didn't personally plan and won't personally see. You sit in a room lit only by monitors, watching a feed of a compound 8,000 miles away, and you give a word, and something happens that you will never speak about to anyone who wasn't in that room. Afterward, nobody debriefs the feeling. There is no feeling section on the form. This is where the numbness stops being a side effect and becomes a tool you actively cultivate. You practice not feeling things the way other people practice a language. It gets easier. That ease should frighten you. It stopped frightening you a while ago. You start to understand who actually runs this world, not the generals whose names appear in briefings, but a smaller group of people who move between government, contractor, and unaffiliated, so fluidly the distinction becomes meaningless. You're being quietly evaluated for entry into that group. The budgets at this level stop being denominated in thousands. A single operation support package transport, cover identities, contingency payments, technical assets can run past $2 million, spread across line items that would mean nothing to anyone who found the paperwork by accident. You sign off on figures like that the way you used to sign off on a fuel requisition. The number stops registering as money. It becomes just another variable in the equation. You clear a level of trust that most operators never touch. You also lose the ability to explain, even to yourself, exactly what you've become. Level 6. The handler. You stop wearing a uniform. The title on your badge, if you have a badge at all, says something bureaucratic and forgettable. Your actual function is to run people, assets, cutouts, other operators who report to you without ever knowing your real name. You are, functionally, a shadow employer inside an organization that officially doesn't employ shadows. Money moves through you in volumes that would have seemed insane at level 3. Contracts worth 7 figures get shaped by a sentence you say in a meeting. You clear more in a single quarter, moving through accounts with names like holding companies, than your entire original team earned in 5 years combined, and none of it touches your name. You learn the final, ugliest rule of power in this world. The people who look most powerful are usually the least protected. Generals get replaced. Politicians get voted out. But the handlers, the ones nobody can quite name, whose signatures don't appear on the documents that matter, those are the ones who survive every administration, every scandal, every war that ends and gets replaced by the next one. You start to become one of the unnamed. It's not glamorous. It's lonely in a way you didn't expect wealth and influence to be. You go to dinners where everyone is powerful and nobody is honest, including you, and you drive home to a house that feels less like a home than any barracks ever did. Loyalty at this level is the rarest currency of all, rarer than cash, rarer than information, because everyone here has learned that loyalty is negotiable and has negotiated it at least once. You trust exactly 3 people. You're not entirely sure any of them would say the same about you. You keep a mental ledger of who owes you and who you owe, updated constantly, more precise than any spreadsheet. A senator's aide owes you for a problem that disappeared quietly 2 years ago. You owe a contractor for a contract awarded without a real bidding process. None of this is written anywhere. All of it is enforced anyway by a shared understanding that reputations in this world are the only real law, and reputations once broken don't come back. You've built an empire nobody can see. You start to wonder what exactly you built it for. Level 7. The architect. By now you don't take direction. You give it quietly to people who think the direction came from somewhere else. You sit 2, 3, 4 steps removed from every operation that matters. Your fingerprints are nowhere. Your influence is everywhere. You've become one of the handful of people in the country who can move a task force, redirect a budget line, or end a career with a phone call that lasts under 90 seconds, and the person on the other end will never fully understand why they made the decision they think was their own. This is the level where you stop being an operator, a handler, even a person with a job. You become a condition of the system itself, something that has to be accounted for by anyone operating at scale, the way weather has to be accounted for. The moral compromises here aren't decisions anymore. They're maintenance. You maintain relationships with people you find repugnant because the alternative is losing access. You maintain silences about things that would end other people's lives if spoken, because speaking them would end yours too, just more slowly, more publicly. You've built wealth that no longer needs your attention to grow. You've built protection that no longer needs your presence to hold. What you haven't built, what nobody at this level manages to build, is anyone who can be fully honest with you anymore. Every relationship left in your life has an angle. You've become fluent in reading the angle before the sentence finishes. You think, sometimes late, about the man who got in the white truck all those years ago. You wonder if he got out easier than you did. You suspect he did. There is a specific kind of freedom at this level that nobody tells you is also a cage. You can move money, careers, and outcomes with a precision most people spend a lifetime chasing and never reach. And you can't tell a single person outside a room of maybe 5 human beings what any of it means, or costs, or feels like at 3 a.m. when the machinery of your own making keeps you awake instead of at rest. Power, it turns out, doesn't come with company. It comes with a longer and longer list of things you can never say out loud again. Level 8. The ghost. There's no ceremony for this level. There's no title. If you tried to explain it to someone, they'd assume you were speaking metaphorically, and you'd let them believe that because the alternative explanation is unbelievable and also entirely true. You exist at this point mostly as an absence. Files that reference you use initials that don't match your name. Meetings that concern you happen without you present, decided by people who've never met you but who've inherited an understanding, passed down like scripture, that certain things simply aren't done without your quiet, distant approval. You don't run operations anymore. You don't run people. You maintain the architecture that other people's operations and other people's careers quietly depend on, the way a foundation maintains a building nobody thinks about until it cracks. The isolation is total, and it is the most honest cost anyone never warns you about. You could call perhaps 2 people in the world and say something true, and even then, true has become a smaller category than it used to be. You've spent so many years shaping what other people are allowed to know that you've lost some private, unrecoverable percentage of your own ability to know things simply, without calculating who else might need to know them too. You have more control than almost anyone alive in your world. You could, with a handful of calls, reroute outcomes that will appear in history books written by people who will never learn your name. And you understand with the same clinical clarity you once used to calculate risk on a 12-man team, that this is the actual price of everything you've built. Not danger, not money, not even morality. Just this. A quiet room. A phone that rings less than it used to. A version of power so complete it has nothing left to prove itself against. You think of the boy who got off the bus at 4 a.m., breath fogging, certain that the worst was already behind him. He had no idea. Somewhere tonight, a bus pulls into a parking lot lit by sodium lamps. A man in a tan beret is already screaming before the doors fully open. A kid steps down into the cold with a number instead of a name, sure that the next few months will be the hardest thing he ever survives. He thinks he understands what he's joining. He doesn't, but he will.